Welcome to True House Stories. I am Lenny Fontana, coming out of New York City, and it's sweltering hot. And I want to let everybody know we had a fantastic holiday weekend. Went to a ton of parties, saw a lot of people, and yes, we're trying to stay safe, and numbers are still kind of going up with COVID, but we're working through it, and hopefully with this bad dream can be behind us soon. But thankfully, we're still here, and we're on our 51st episode. That means we're 51 weeks in already. So for today's special episode, I asked one of our favorite vocalists to come on up and join the show, and she said, hell yeah. In fact, she says, I was waiting for you to ask me. So I said, you know I'm going to ask you, Billie Ray Martin. Welcome to True House Stories, girl. What's up? How you doing? You good?
I'm good.
Right. So first thing before we get started, because of course everybody knows I'm going to ask that first question, I want to say to you, how has COVID been and how have you handled surviving through it?
It's like, well, it's been a long one, hasn't it? It's been a long one. And as time progressed, it actually became harder because I didn't always agree with government decisions about what had to happen and what kinds of crazy things you had to do next and not do, and how you can not go into a shop without this and that and the other. And, you know, it became really bizarre. And I also felt a lot of isolation, not because of the isolation, which was the obvious one, but because of people's attitudes of fighting each other and disagreements not being discussed. And instead, people attacked each other a lot. It's still continuing. So that made me feel quite alienated.
Okay.
From people, you know, rather than, hey, we need to come together in this. The opposite is kind of what appeared to be happening, you know, if you look on social media. So that was hard, and it became a bit, you know, increasingly a bit difficult to handle. But
I'm glad you look healthy and you look pretty as happy as you always do. So you look confident and happy, and I know you're busy, and you'll tell us all about that, of course. And we want to welcome you to this wonderful show that we do each and every week, as you know. So let's get right into it. Let's dig in deep, because we got that damn football game that God forgive never cursed them out, but has to be on my night. Can't put on another night. Move it to Thursday. Oh, it is Thursday as well, this show.
I know.
So, Billie, as I ask everyone, I'll ask you the same. How does music find you, or you find the music as a young girl?
How does or how did?
How did you find it? Or did it find you, I should say, whichever way it was.
Well, I guess it found me because I'm one of those people. I don't know if it's a rare thing or it happens a lot, but I was literally 2 years old when I started singing. And I know this because my family told me, my grandparents would later tell me stories about, you know, how I was 2 years old and I was on the rocking horse and they couldn't get my attention and I was just sitting there singing, you know. And then when I was like 5 or 6, I was literally making tapes. Telling like reel to reel, and you know, we had like a domestic like reel to reel thing at home, and which was my grandmother's, and I would sing on it, and I would put it in an envelope and give it to my grandmother and say, could you send this to the television? Because, you know, so this is like when I was 5, or, you know, so this is like literally. So I think sort of music came with me onto this earth, you know, plane.
So you were already predisposed, as we say, coming from the other side, ready for this.
I think so. It was all a plan, probably.
Maybe you were, as an entertainer during the time when Moses walked the earth. And you could have been royalty. You could have been working for the royal, you know, for the.
I was entertaining the troops, right?
The Romans at that time, you were doing all the sideshows for the Romans.
Yeah.
So, of course, now So you actually destined to go to television or radio. So that was something that was in you. So then take us on the trip now of how it begins, the career starting.
Well, my grandparents, because I come from a working class family, so this career thing or this idea of you can go out into the world and do what you want to do wasn't really something I was told. This was something that was almost not for us. That's the message I was given, we're a working class family and these people on television, that's for them, but not for you, So I was not given this kind of, hey, go and get it, at all. So I'm mentioning that because it wasn't until I actually left my grandparents' home and went to, Berlin and London and just looked around is when I threw the chains off, so to speak. And I sort of threw myself. Yeah, that was me.
That's Billie right there when she took the chains off.
Then she took the chains off and that was in Berlin. And it was my first group I was singing in. That was just a snapshot.
Hang on, before you get to the first group. So you leave. Okay, so let me understand this. So your grandparents and that typical age group saw the television as rich stars, Hollywood.
Yeah, or even, German singers that were, in the hit parade and, but it was just like, this is a different world, And I didn't feel it was a different world, but I was given that message that it was, so it took a lot for me to actually question that later.
So what was the expectations? What were you supposed to go do? Work where?
Yeah, well, in my family, I come from the red light district of Hamburg, right? So my family were working class. They were either working class people. My grandfather was a crane driver. My grandmother was a housewife. My mother, my aunt, this aunt and that aunt and the other aunt, they were all working in the red light district. Various, ladies and bar personnel and whatever. My mother too, when she was 18, my mother, she was a bar lady at the place where the Beatles first started. So she knew the Beatles and stuff like that. So this is the kind of environment, that I was born into. So there was all that connection to music but there was, but they were all working class people, harbor workers, so there really wasn't that. And they didn't, like my grandmother's my grandmother's son and her daughter, they never had any proper jobs that they learned because my grandmother sort of didn't let them. It just wasn't something that she promoted. It wasn't like, it was almost like you have to stay within this social class or this, it just wasn't on her radar, I don't think, but it was on mine. I think I'm the first person that actually went out there and did something very different, in the family.
Oh, big time. First of all, for any family to go into the arts program it's not like you're saying, well, I became a doctor or, a lawyer. The parents and grandparents, like you said, were barmaids, worked in the red light district, crane operator, or worked as plumbers, electrical and stuff. That's the typical jobs. Your job is not, and at that time, it's not like today with social media, people can look and research.
Right.
Heard of to go out. And I'm leaving to go to London. Why? They must have. Why? They must have said,
but I always knew I was going to London. I had like English books as a little.
No, they knew that. You knew that in your gut feeling. They must have been saying, why is she going?
Yeah.
In their mind.
Yeah. So
you were destined for bigger things. Apparently you were.
Yeah. I just, it wasn't easy. It wasn't something, I wasn't given that message that you can do this, I just wasn't given that. So
more promoted to stay safe, get the regular job, leave that arts thing to those other people.
Exactly.
That's for you.
something like that.
And you said, "Oh no." So now, how do you get the money together? What do you do to go to London? What's your next stop? You thinking about?
I mean, London and then Berlin and then London again. I went back, London at first was more like, it was almost like a school trip, and then I finished school and then I went straight back there. I was like, the first time I laid eyes on London, I knew as a little kid I was going to go there, I knew when I was 5 years old, I was going to go there and stay there. And, I thought I was the Queen of England. I used to dress up like the Queen as a child, and wave. So, but anyway, I just stayed in London a short while. Yeah, it was more like a longer school trip or whatever. And then I remember we went there for New Year's Eve, just a long weekend. And I was just in love with London. But then, because we were young, we went to Berlin and we were there for a while. And that's where I sang in my first groups there in Berlin. And then later I went back to London and stayed 15 years there. So
Berlin's the first groups. What groups were you singing with in Berlin?
The very first one, you wouldn't have even ever heard the demos we did because they're like crazy. It was me and another guy in the bedroom with like one of those keyboards that has an inbuilt drum machine, and we thought we were Depeche Mode and Yazoo and doing all that. So that was the very first, but we made this crazy ass experimental, just insane. We would just roll around the floor laughing. Never, and then we even did a live show, which actually went down really well. But then I actually sang in a soul group called Billy and the Deep, and we were like the Berlin sensation overnight. So that was nice. So that we just had a couple of gigs, and then the next thing I know, we're like on the front cover of every newspaper, and it's like the new thing, and then so that was just amazing. That was just a short time, but it was crazy and it was great.
So you went from experimental to soul.
yeah, because somebody had introduced me to soul music, which I was only aware of marginally, but I went into a Berlin record shop one day, picking up some 60s revival, like 60s garage music. I collected those records, and then the guy behind the counter said, "Have you ever heard soul music?" And I don't know why he said that, and I was sort of like, "Yeah, of course I have," but I hadn't really, not in a very conscious way. And so he said, "I tell you what, I'm going to order a couple of Motown records for you, Martha Reeves and also the Supremes, And then when they arrived, I was like, okay, well, what else do you need? This is really, it changed my whole entire life. So then I had this dilemma of, well, what do? I like the repetitive electronic music. And I listen to John Peel, and I like all that stuff, but I now want to shift my focus onto singing really about something that's a bit less complicated and a bit less true to the, directly from the soul."
Sure.
And so I wanted to combine the two, and that's when the whole trouble started,
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So then take us on that now. So what do you mean the trouble started? How does the trouble begin?
Well, when I wanted to combine two kinds of music that weren't normally combined: soul music with electronic music.
Okay.
There were some groups doing, bits and pieces like that, but not necessarily in this way that I wanted to do it, in like really authentic soul.
Right.
So I started exploring, and so when I was in Berlin, that was a pure 11-piece soul group. It was just revival soul. It was amazing. I loved it, But then I went to London, and that's when the time was just sort of right to combine the two directions, electronic music and soul music. I mean, house music to me allowed that, So I went.
See, now that's crazy. Now, because you went in that record shop previous, and you're already getting the soul input. So now you're able to then study it and then figure out how you're going to implement that into.
Yeah. And I would go to the first house clubs in London, where nobody knew what it was. People were. Do
you remember what they called it at that time? Do you remember what they were calling the music yet? It was so experimental because nobody knew what it was called, really.
Well, I mean, there were sort of whispers about acid house, There's this club, where people dress funny and they do these dances and nobody really knew what it was. But I just went, and the first house night that I went to was at Heaven. It was a night at Heaven. I can't remember what the night was called, but it was pure acid house. And there were like 20 people on the dance floor. Next week, 150. Next week, 500. It grew so quickly. It was unbelievable.
So you were right there at a groundbreaking moment in the UK.
Yeah. It was, and it was like in the very beginning, it was sort of hip hop guys against acid house guys. So the hip hop guys would be assembled around the dance floor with their arms folded. And then the week after that, you would see them on the dance floor, So it was totally like that. And you could see it. And it grew like wildfire. It was great.
Those are the kind of things that you like to see happen. It's like a homogenizing way.
Yeah.
Organic.
And for me, it was just, I was looking for that repetitive thing. That's what I was trying to do in Berlin with my friend in the bed, in the bedroom with a drum machine. But now was the time, and now people were doing it, and people were responding to that kind of thing. And I just felt, and I was just enjoying being on the dance floors. But then one day, I went to the WAG Club, and I was dancing and, going nuts on the dance floor to all kinds of stuff. And Julian Jonas' record, Jealousy and Lies, was playing. And I just
lost it, right?
I lost my shit. I just stopped. And I went up to the DJ and I said, what is this? What is this? And he told me. The next day I went and got the record, and to me it was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is it,
Good decision.
And yeah, so the first Electribe 101 single was basically a ripoff of Julian's record.
So now who is in, and how do you meet? What's the next steps from the Heaven and the WAG Club?
I was living in a really downtrodden housing cooperative in London, and with no money and no outlook, and it was like really depressed because I wasn't making music, and I was sort of seeing no perspective. And I put an advertisement in the Melody Maker newspaper, for those that are not familiar with Melody Maker, and it said, Soul Rebel seeks musicians, genius only. And
that's a big tall order.
I know, right? And so the guys
murdered, genius only. That means we don't want no people that are basic start outs.
Wasting my time. But I was just,
wants the best of the best to come forward.
But I had already written the melodies and lyrics to Talking with Myself at that point. So I had a few, demos and bits and pieces like that. And then the guys from Birmingham, who later, we became Electribe 101, they came to see me from Birmingham, and At first, I wasn't sure. Like, I thought they were weird. And, I was just like, no, I don't think so, guys. But thanks for coming, And then Brian, who later became Electribe, called me one day from Birmingham and said, look, we have a recording studio up in Birmingham, So I was like, okay. So I went up there with Julian Jonas' record and with a few demos, one of them being melodies and lyrics for Talking with Myself. And the guys just instantly, they were just, they had already experimented with dance music, which was just starting then,
What was the demo consisting of that you did? Was it just you singing into the
mic? It was a very different, no, it had a backing track, but it was done with different people. So it was like a ballad. It was like a slowish ballad with a little groove, but but the melody and the lyrics were identical because once I write a song, I never change it, no matter what happens. I'm really inflexible. So, but the music was completely different.
So you don't compromise, basically. You don't compromise.
I'm not flexible.
What it is what it is. There's no.
I write a song. The moment I write it, every note is exactly where it is, and it stays that way. And it's like really like,
you fit your music to go around my song, not the other way around.
I'm not very flexible at all. So anyway, the guys didn't really need any persuasion or, they just took to it like, yeah, no problem. We want to do this anyway. And that's how that happened,
Okay, so you do this, now you record up there and you get everything prepared. What happens? Are you living up in the Birmingham area? You're working on the record, or are you going back and forth from London?
I went back and forth for the next 4 or 5 years. Stayed in London, went back and forth. And what happened was that the record was picked up by all these pirate radio stations. There was a white label, which we actually hand printed and stuff. And it was picked up by all these radio stations, pirates. And then Brian from the group said, I have a contact at Phonogram Records. And like 5 minutes later, we were signed. It was like, so there was no process, other than the white label was really championed by people out there.
Going out, doing the bar scene like a typical rock band and having to prepare and play out all those gigs and then hopefully an A&R.
Not in that case, no. But I think I did that in Berlin, and also they did that as whatever previous group they were, And so then the record was released and it was a bit of a hit, I guess.
Oh yeah, it was a very successful record for its time. What year was that record that was it released? Do you remember?
I'm not very good at with dates, but I think it was
year about
89.
That's right. Around that
Fans will probably correct me, right? But it's probably 89.
I remember playing that record around 1989. Yes. So, Billie, now that you're not broke anymore in 89, the record comes out and you're starting to play music and play out. What changed? Mm-hmm. What happens to you as a performer now? You go from, underground to what happened?
Yeah, I was suddenly on the cover of every magazine and in the limelight, which was really, for me, it was kind of weird because, I'd always felt that's where, you know what I mean? Like the 2-year-old or the 5-year-old going, I want to be on that television, and there I was, So for me, it was just like, yeah. But you know what I mean? And I was thrilled, of course. And I was also thrilled because I could put some ideas into place that I had, because, I have ideas for videos and photos and clothes, and I design clothes. I do the whole sort of thing, and it was just amazing. So suddenly, I could do it, which was just great, And then, So it wasn't anything unusual for me. I just felt like, yeah, okay, that took a while. So
Top of the Pops too with that year.
a lot of time. Yeah, we did. Actually, Electribe did it twice. Prior to that, I was on Top of the Pops, I think, a few times with S Express, which I briefly sang in. Also, I should mention.
Well, we're gonna clap, everybody. S Express,
right? S Express. That was fun.
He left that out. That little. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I forgot. Another band.
So I had my little Top of the Pops experience, I guess.
So before you picked up with Electribe 101, when did you record the S Express stuff?
I met Mark Moore from S Express at Shroom Club. And I went up to him and I said, I'm a singer. And, I'd love to sing and all this. And he said, oh, really? Okay, well, and I gave him my number and he actually called me. And so that's it. Went in the studio. A few months later, went in the studio and recorded a few songs with him for the album.
And all of a sudden, you're on Top of the Pops not too long after, right?
With all these crazy people from the group. I loved them all. They were a wonderful bunch of crazy people. Just amazing. Just really great. It was like, wow, what group? I had so many fun times with them. And then Electribe sort of started happening around that time too. So
that's why you did the Melody Maker magazine advert you put in there looking for genius? Because you were already spoiled with some good stuff. You already had big records.
No, I think I can't remember if I put the ad in. Yeah, it was. I don't know if I'd already recorded with S Express or not, but it was around that time I put the ad in. Yeah.
And that record hit the charts. I don't remember what. I know it was top 20. I don't know exactly where it was, but I remember that record was pretty big too.
Which one?
S Express.
Oh yeah, that was Hey Music Lover. I mean, the first one, Theme from S Express, that was number 1.
Yes.
And then Hey Music Lover must have been number. Oh, you know what? I'm guessing here, but top 10 for sure.
But what does that mean? A number 1 record now? You went from.
It means nothing now, but it meant a lot then.
To explain that feeling, because you must have went from I'm just now recording, and all of a sudden, holy smoke, we're number 1 in the pop.
Yeah, but that was more because that was Mark's group. I was just a guest, so I was just there having fun and showing up for all these gigs we did abroad and the recordings and stuff. And but I didn't feel like it wasn't me that was having a number 1. I was just singing on singing on the record.
But but remember, you're hearing your voice all over the place. Mm-hmm. Everywhere you go into McDonald's, you sit down and eat. You hear the song play on the speakers. So you have to feel that feeling, no matter if it's not your group or not. It's still a great, successful feeling.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But let's take it back a little bit. Did you like being depressed and not have anything happening?
Did I like being depressed?
Right, and you saying, nothing is happening yet? No,
it was horrible. It was horrible. It was.
So now you're in a position where something sparks like that. That means you can take that and say, hey, that's me on that record. And that opens a big door, right? It opens. I'm going to also take a guess that Electribe, the band members of Electribe 101 probably said to Phonogram, hey, this is Billie singing on here. And the number 1 hit she had with S Express? Mate, that's her too. And they're like, oh, we definitely sign it.
I don't think so. I don't think they did. I just think Talking with Myself was so championed by DJs out there.
What happens is when you talk to A&R people, that's all you have to do is say those magic words.
Really? Oh, okay. I forget.
Yeah, you would say to someone, yeah, she had the massive hit with such as S Express.
Right.
And of course, they'll be like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Oh, Yeah, no question. We want to bring the record in. We want to sign it. And that's usually what happens is the excitement. Machine is moving. So life is changing for you at that point, right?
Big time. But it doesn't mean that I'm, I mean, this and I know this. It's not easy, whether you have a hit record or not. It's not easy to be dealing with major record companies.
Oh God!
So it's not like, suddenly I'm just flying high and I'm having a ball and I don't really have to worry about a thing. You in fact you worry about more because you're put under pressure. You're told what to do, what not to do, and so suddenly the machine becomes a bit of a hamster wheel, So it's not like, I'm just flying high going, I've got all these hit records and look at me on Top of the Pops. I'm just like, because Top of the Pops wasn't a walk in the park either. It's like, it was a weird show. They tell you where to stand and where to look and what to wear and what not to do. And you better not misbehave because otherwise they won't like you and they won't have you come back. And, so there's, it's not like,
I remember that too. The rules are ridiculous. With that
yeah. So it's, so it's not like suddenly there are no problems. You just have a set of different problems, I think,
But you're in demand now. That's the difference.
I suppose.
Change is, you wish. Look, let's break it down for the people at home watching. And think about this, everybody. You all wish for something to happen. And I've done this too. When you're in the middle of wishing this, you don't realize these crazy things happen. But you have a different picture in your mind.
Right.
Of what the end result is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the picture at 5 years old, the picture at 18 years old, the picture at 23 years old, it's way different, right? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah.
Was it anything you imagined what you thought it was going to be like when you got...
I never thought about what it was going to be like. I was just always following my favorite stars, when I was little and as I grew up and as a teenager and then later, David Bowie and everyone, I followed and I was just living for, I was living for the music others made too, because that was my whole world. And I just kept thinking, I can do this. But I never thought about what that would be like, because I was not given that message from my home upbringing that I could be one of those people. And so when I then finally went and just, broke through some barriers to actually just go and do it, I still didn't think, it just sort of happened.
Let's show everybody the kind of barriers you broke through. So the Electribe thing breaks out, and look who she's touring with. Look who she's touring with there. Breathe that in really nicely. On a World Violation tour.
Right.
And who's the opening act on the European leg?
Yeah. And guess who's bottled off stage every night by the fans? By 50,000 people.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to bring you Electribe 101.
Boo! Boo!
And everybody goes crazy, right? Look. Sold out. You know what I'm saying? And that's the flyer. And that's what you're dealing with. Wembley Arena. She's going from, I'm living alone. And all of a sudden, here we are all over Europe.
I know.
World domination. World violation. This is why we have to laugh about it, because she says it so eloquently.
That wasn't a piece of cake, that tour, I'm telling you. I was drinking heavily to go through it, That
is what the hell you were dealing with. People want to know what a superstar like you at that moment, you're on television. Now, mind you, remember, let me break it down for you very simple, everyone at home. There was no social internet. So what would happen is Billie's picture would be in the paper or a magazine. Right. That's the social media that we all had at that time. So if Billie broke into something big, it was the next month's issue of a magazine. Right. It was on the next morning's paper, front page of the Sun.
Yeah.
So give us what the hell are you doing? You're drinking so much. Why were you drinking on a Depeche Mode?
Because in those days, Depeche Mode fans were really hardcore.
What do you mean hardcore? What do you mean hardcore? So,
they didn't want to see support groups, so we were literally bottled off stage every night. Oh. And yeah. So it was horrible. It's really, I mean, we could do a whole hour and I could tell you stories that happened while we were on that stage and the things that were thrown at us, and you would die laughing. And today I can laugh about it, but let me tell you, at that time, nobody laughed about it. Not even Depeche Mode, because they knew what was going on and they were really kind to us, you know.
So what were they throwing at you that you said that you could laugh? That we can look back, we can laugh now. But at that time,
it depends which country. Tomatoes, shoes, coins, and you know, raised middle fingers and fuck off Electribe and you know, boo.
No.
And it was horrible. It was really horrible. And I you know, I didn't want to continue, and they made me stay on the tour because we signed a contract. You know, this is like, yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to tell everybody at home. This is the realness of why this is cool.
This is the realness.
House stories. Well, true lies stories. This is lies house story. These are true. This is as true as it gets. All right, keep going. So each country had its own way of really booing it. Spain threw coins at you. What happened in the Baltic area? What were they doing there? And like did you go to Scandinavia too?
Yeah, we went everywhere.
What did they give you in Scandinavia? What were they throwing at you?
That whole region of the world was very well behaved. They just ignored us. You know, that was great. There are countries where people were quite well behaved, and then there were countries which were so bad that you never wanted to go back to them again. You know. So it was a mixed bag, but generally, yeah, that's what would happen. Big time having things thrown at us.
Oh, Billie, I'm so sorry.
I mean, now I laugh because, you know, but it wasn't funny then, I'm telling you.
No, I don't think it would ever be funny now, but we're laughing because it's adorable, but not at that time. Now when you're a breakout act, you know, you're trying to make your own path. These people are not hearing that. They don't want to hear, get off our stage. Bring us Depeche Mode. We didn't pay to listen to Electribe 101.
That's it.
That's all it was. We didn't pay for this. Why do we have to stand an hour to go do this band? What are you guys doing to us? You're killing us.
And I mean, we played live too, you know, so we were like double pissed about the whole thing, you know, because we were really, because, you know, in those days, the mixes that were done on stage with that was done live, and the bass, everything was played live, the bass, the keyboards, everything, you know, so we were like double pissed that we were just wasting our time. What was nice though, of course, were the gigs in the UK, because people there were quite happy to hear a support group. They were quite happy to hear us. They knew our music, and they were absolutely wonderful. So that was the last leg of the tour was UK, and it was just like being back in civilization, frankly, you know, it was great.
God bless. Thank God. So keep going now. Take us on the Electribe to the next journey. So how long do you stay with Electribe, and what goes there?
We did the singles, 3 more singles. Tell Me When the Fever Ended was a hit, Back on Top of the Pops. You're Walking was a minor hit, but big enough for the record company, you know, that kind of thing. Then we did Inside Out, which was not picked up by Radio 1. And in those days, it was a Radio 1 or nothing, you know, situation. So if Radio 1 didn't playlist your song, you were out, you know, it was that kind of thing. So Inside Out wasn't a hit. And we then went to record a second album, which we started in the studio in Birmingham. Recorded most of the tracks. The record company said they wanted to put us together with another producer to see if, you know, that could maybe enhance whatever we were doing. And then Howard Gray from Apollo 440, he produced 2 or 3 of the songs. Did really well, and we went to Olympic Studios in London, you know, so it was all this kind of big time, but also big pressure, of course. But they sounded really good, and then we did the rest of the mixes ourselves in Birmingham, delivered. And I mean, the group was under a lot of strain. We were managed by Tom Watkins. It was difficult. We kind of lost a lot of the Depeche Mode tour. Had really been difficult for us. We weren't having much fun anymore together. You know,
so that whole tour changed.
There was so much pressure. You know, the tour was strenuous for us. Also, as people, you know. Sticking together through thick and thin, you know, I don't think we'd had time to learn all that. And then Tom Watkins was a destructive force trying to break up the group. So he was trying to like place mistrust between us.
How was he? Was he starting?
Ooh, a lot of stories. That could be another hour.
But give us an overview. Bird flying.
He was trying to sack individual band members, mostly me, for no apparent reason, just like
sack you.
Because
he just wanted to fire you. He just wanted you out.
He wanted me out, and you know, so it was nuts, you know, and so that was weird because we kept doubting each other, and you know, what's going on, you know, what the hell is all this intrigue, and so we got rid of Tom Watkins, finished the demo mixes for our second album, delivered it to the record company, and they dropped us. So that was the end of the group.
They dropped you.
They dropped us.
What was the reason?
Okay, the remark from the managing director of Phonogram, at the time, whose name escapes me, said, "What's with this soul shit?" And we were dropped.
Wow, that's incredible. What is with this soul shit?
Yeah. So this is now an album that we're releasing this year. After all these years, went through every, you know, because the audio had to be restored. They were mastered 3 times. I rejected all, you know, so a lot of work's just gone into it, and it will come out this year. So.
Yeah, we'll get to that moment. That album will find its way to the ending of this.
I can't believe it after all these years. Yeah.
Almost 3 decades it's been sitting waiting to see the light of day.
Mm.
Billie, what happens at that point when you're dropped? What do you do? Like, hang on. Before we go, let's go to a commercial because we got to have